Hey, I'm Richard Gere, and this is Oren Moverman, and this is a funny experience for me because I have no presence on social media, but thank you for tuning in, or I don't even know what you call it, logging in, tuning in.
Anything in.
I want to be as honest with you as I possibly can. I have no agenda here other than discussing with you as directly as I can why you guys responded to that posting of a picture of me as a homeless man, and the story, which wasn't really accurate, that came along with it, but it was kind of moving, the story. What it was that touched, I think, a lot of people. The numbers were huge from what Facebook people tell me. And I kind of wonder if there's something that we have in common and that we can work together on that can create a community of responsibility. And specifically about the homeless issue, but it could be about anything. Again, I'm not having any strong agenda here other than trying to figure out and engage an impulse that many of you had to talk about this issue and have some deep and profound emotional response to it. There's a lot of letters that came in and notices to me personally. People telling their stories. There's kids and mothers, fathers, people who've been homeless themselves, people who have engaged homeless people, have their minds and hearts changed radically. This kind of transformation of our thinking is something that interests me enormously, and I'd love to engage as many of you who would want to on this issue of how do we get out of our shells and see the world, see other people completely as our brothers and sisters, as ourselves, and kind of within in the universe of care and concern that we have. That's the only way we're going to transform our experience in this world, transform our communities, country, the planet, the universe, is on that level. But there was something about this posting of this photograph of me as a homeless person that stimulated this kind of thought inside of me and a lot of you. So I think this wasn't set up exactly the way I was hoping. I thought we'd have a very spontaneous dialogue and communication, but the technology hasn't been figured out. I think we're going to try to do something in the future that is more spontaneous and real time. This is being recorded. You're going to see it, I think, very soon after, within 10 minutes, you said, something like that, of us doing this. But I would like to have something, if you guys want something, that would be more spontaneous and live and in the moment. And I think in the meantime, while we're trying to figure out how to do that and make it real, there were some questions
There were
comments.
a series of questions that came in, and many of you asked similar questions, so they compiled it for us. And the first question is, what inspired you to create this film, Time Out of Mind?
And this is to both of us.
To both of us.
But I think a lot of these are questions that are, there were hundreds maybe of the same kind of question.
Yeah.
So we're answering them personally, but generically as well. There's a group in New York that I've been involved with for some time called the Coalition for the Homeless, and it does work on the ground, feeding people, housing people, and they're an advocacy group in New York City that really does extraordinary work. And I was very moved to be part of that organization, help that organization. At about the same time that I started working with them, a script came to me on the subject, and the script didn't quite have what I wanted it to have. I felt there was something powerful and mysterious that hadn't emerged yet. So long story short, I ended up buying the script knowing that I was going to have to rewrite this. And, from my experiences in the homeless shelters and people on the street who didn't want to go to the shelters, who had tried the shelters and it wasn't a positive experience for them, my own sense of this problem, the dilemma, the need, I think got deeper and deeper. I ended up reading a book by a friend of mine, Cadillac Man, called In the Land of Lost Souls. And it was the way he presented his life experience in a very straightforward way, with no self-pity, no sentimentality, that kind of informed what this film should feel like, with a great deal of honesty, and not being forced to have the usual plot turns that one normally has in films or television, but something maybe a little more contemplative and hopefully deeper, that maybe captures something common and universal in all of us, that this yearning for place, for home, for where is my family? Where are the people that think I am precious and treat me as a precious being on the planet? And then ran into my old friend Oren Moverman. We'd worked together on a film about Bob Dylan many years ago, and he read the script and responded. And then we went through this process of how can we make this as honest as we possibly can. Revisited the shelters. It was great for me just leading Oren through this process and letting it filter through his brilliant writer's mind, director's mind, how to tell this story. So, Oren, why don't you tell me about your involvement?
My answer is a lot shorter because my inspiration was Richard. When I ran into him, it was at a party. It was around Christmas. And he said, I have this thing. It's been in my head and in my hands for a long time. Can't figure it out. Need to work with someone like you. But it's about a homeless guy. And my immediate reaction was, as a filmmaker, when an actor tells you he's obsessed with something, he's deeply committed to something, there's something really interesting going on.
You get some emotion out of it. Yeah, right? I can poke this guy, and there's something there.
Exactly. And so I was fascinated with it. I read the script, thought there's potential there, and then it was really going to the shelter because I've been in Manhattan for 27 years, and we're all aware of the homeless population, but I was not aware of the world of the shelters. I was never inside a shelter, and Richard really led me through that system, and through that system, talking to people, seeing that everyone has a reason, everyone's fighting a great battle. I was completely inspired to join him on this journey that led us here.
Not easy to get into the shelters either. I mean, when I first was going to the shelters maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I had to become an inspector for the coalition to be able to get in. The Legal Aid Society and the coalition are the only ones who are allowed in, to monitor, see what's happening. And Oren became an inspector also to come in when he started his process. Look, there's 60,000 people on any given night that are homeless in New York City. There's maybe a million people in America, the richest country in the world, 1 million people who are homeless on any given night. New York and Los Angeles, the numbers are going higher and higher all the time. Overall in the country, they're going down, but in the major cities, it's going up. But I see this larger than America. I think we're talking to a lot of friends, brothers and sisters out there from other countries and other continents. Same problem everywhere. Clearly, with the refugee crisis, displaced people from North Africa, from the Middle East. This is a huge problem everywhere. Where's my home? And what is our personal responsibility, those of us who do have some stability in our lives, who do have a paycheck big enough that can pay our expenses, just food and housing and medical issues and putting our kids in school, whatever that may be. What is our responsibility to our brothers and sisters who don't have that? This is the key question to me. And I think really why I wanted to be part of a discussion. I certainly don't want to give speeches, and so I wanted to set this up as a dialogue, and maybe next time we'll do that. But it seems to me the dividing point between all philosophies, all religions, all people, is the issue of, are we in this together or not? Are we, all of us, in this together? Are we here to take care of each other or not?
which leads us into the next question perfectly. People are asking, why do you think people are so insensitive to the homeless? Are we desensitized as a society?
Yeah, of course we're desensitized. Look, I was very fortunate to, just 2 days ago, to accept the Liberty Medal for His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Philadelphia. This is a big deal in America. And I find myself thinking about this word liberty, the Liberty Medal. And there's the Liberty Bell, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all these things, liberty. But liberation is on a different level too, which is even more primal, I think, than that. More visceral and more important is this sense of being liberated from selfishness, being liberated, having liberty from this incredible drive we have for self and accumulation of wealth, accumulation of energy and power. We need to be liberated from that. If we are liberated from that as individuals, then we have the possibility of creating community. And that's real liberty. Until everyone is free on that level, none of us are. And we may not feel it right now, but eventually these problems come up. When people are in extremis, they do violent things, they do crazy things. I would do crazy things if I was an extremis. When I was playing this part, I could feel on the street that I could let my mind go. It wasn't going to be that hard to go into this space where I just wasn't part of the social structure anymore, and all the restraints that are inherent in that, of being a good citizen, being part of the social structure. That can dissolve very quickly. It feels like we're very solid and we know the rules and we're good, solid citizens, but we're only good, solid citizens as long as things are going well. And when they're not, we fall apart. And I would fall apart, you would fall apart. And we see it in our neighbors, our brothers and sisters all over the world. I mean, this incredible thing, this is Syrians looking for a home now. Their families, young kids, the weather's getting bad. The lines of people that go on for miles and miles and miles. It's like right after World War II, of the refugees looking for home, looking for a place that's not bombed out, where their kids can grow up without violence all around them and death. The only way we can have the energy to engage that is to soften that sense of selfishness that we all seem to carry with us.
Do you think a big part of the problem is that as individuals we feel powerless? We see it everywhere. We see homelessness everywhere. We, as individuals, are fighting our own battles and we feel like there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, I think that's what I was saying. We think it's our own private battles, but it's all the same battle. Momentarily, we can take care of our situation, but our environment, our world, is the world of our hearts as well as our minds. And our experience in a world where people are suffering is we ultimately will be suffering with them. And if we don't see that, like right in the beginning, with any problem, if you don't deal with it right away, it compounds. And then it's almost too hard on all levels, emotionally to deal with it, mentally to deal with it, financially to deal with it. It just gets too big. But our natural tendency is, well, not today, or someone else will take care of that. I've got my own issues. I think we have to maybe forget a little bit about our issues to really be a citizen of our world. We don't have separate worlds. It just doesn't happen that way. There's one universe. And we're this organism, we're cells, we're atoms in this universe, and we're all, in some bizarre way, creating a universe that is complex and extraordinary and intelligent and wants to be alive and function well. If we're not good citizens as cells in this organism, that organism is going to die. That's just the way it works. We all have to do our part.
We have a question from Mary Hood from New York. What has surprised you the most about the reaction people have had to the photo from Time Out of Mind, and among the many personal stories that have been shared with you since, which ones have moved you?
I was surprised by the numbers, frankly, when people started telling me that it was, I mean, I was told 85 million people
Eyeballs, yeah.
that looked at this thing. That's an extraordinary, I mean, it's not like we didn't put photos of this movie out there. I mean, those were kind of around the world, but there was something about the photograph that it was Richard Gere, and I've been doing this a long time, so some people know me. But I think it was the story that was associated with it, with quotes around it, and it was not me. It wasn't my words. In fact, I think it was Gandhi's words were included in there, and I'm not Gandhi, believe me. There was something about that. I think it was this sense of being undercover. There was no mention of the movie in it, which I thought was interesting. It was, I think, a more pure expression that was inherent in that photograph and the article, is that I was going undercover, that I had this experience. And that's partly true. It's just a funny spin. I was playing this character, and I have known the territory. I've been in the shelters and I've been on the street, but I wasn't undercover. That was a funny word. The question of being moved, yes, I am moved by this. Do I want to do something about it? Yeah, I do, and I'm trying to figure out what to do and make it skillful in terms of the use of my energy, but the energy of government, social services, all these things, to make it meaningful. And I'm looking again at the article, and I said, well, I started giving out $100 bills. Well, of course, I didn't have a roll of $100 bills and I'm passing them out. But I feel strongly about giving something to everyone I see. I think that is important, and we can all afford something to give with a good attitude, not making any judgment, just to give. I mean, the ability to be generous is probably the most important thing for a human being. And I think there was something else at the end of that little story that came with it, is that the people cried when I supposedly gave them the $100 bills. That the thought that each of us as a human being could do something that would move another human being, that we could not only do good, we could be good. We could be good. Ultimately, that's what makes us happy. We think maybe it's money or job or power or the right girlfriend, the right boyfriend, whatever. It's when we are good, we're happy. It's as simple as that. And I think that was the crux of that.
Yeah. The question that pops up a lot, what are the resources you suggest for people to get help if they're on the verge of homelessness or are homeless?
Well, I've always felt strongly about and we do have one in New York here, and I did some PSAs for it, that there's a mechanism that if you, in fact, are on the edge, you know someone who's on the edge of losing their apartment, losing their home, that there's an agency in New York. I think it's a 311 number, is that what we
You can call 311 and get that information.
And get that information, 311 in New York. But there is a fund of money that's available to help. Now, I don't know how much and how many people can be helped, but there is a mechanism. In general, my philosophy is it's much cheaper and better to keep people in their apartments and homes, whatever it may be. It's theirs. Housing first is a very important thing. It's not the whole thing, but it's the most important thing to begin a process of healing, reintegrating a self and reintegrating into society. We all need a place that's ours. It doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be incredible, but a place. It's my place. It's my nest. I have the key to that door. I have a letterbox with my name on it. It's a very important thing of integrating a personality and making us effective people, capable of creating successful lives. So housing, desperately important. We all know that. I mean, what successful programs are not rocket science. They're really simple. I was just in Madrid. I don't know if I have any friends from Spain who are watching this, but this is known all over the world. In the shelters that I've been into and the programs that are successful, of course it's about this. It's housing, getting people housing. And then a menu of social services who can teach people, give them the skills to create a successful life. And you don't do that once, it's over and over and over again. Having the patience to deal with people who have disintegrated, who are not part of the structure anymore. And it takes a lot of energy to do that, but it's a good energy. And once you're able to do that, once we commit ourselves to that process, people do well. There's very little recidivism once people have learned the skills of having a successful life.
And there are many organizations, there were questions about being insensitive. Yeah, there are segments of the population that are insensitive to the problem, but we have many organizations. We've visited many places, did fundraisers, the supportive housing network here.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, the coalition we talked about already, that the Coalition for the Homeless.org in New York, Supportive Housing Network of New York, and the National Alliance to End Homelessness, which is at endhomelessness.org, endhomelessness.org, which is an organization that I gave a speech out in Washington a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I think there were like 200 organizations around the country that were represented there, doing incredible work. This is very difficult work. There's no money in it. People have to have extraordinary patience and wisdom to do this kind of work. You're dealing with people that often have mental issues, extremely low self-esteem, a lot of guilt, a lot of issues that make it almost impossible for them to even take advantage of positive input. So the patience that it takes for all of us to deal with the situation is enormous. But there are wonderful organizations all over the world who do this kind of work.
The next question, what was going on through your mind when you were filming the scene and thousands of real New Yorkers walked past you? And this, I think, refers specifically to the scene, and we shot right here, outside the window in Astor Place, when you were panhandling.
Yeah, we had, first of all, the making of this film, I think for all of us who made it, was a very profound experience. And for Oren and I, we had been in the shelters, we'd been around it. It wasn't like it was new territory for us, but there was something about the filming of it and being inside of it in the way that we were trying to do as artists. There was another level of emotion and profundity, I think, that came in. The idea of the film is that well, why don't you set up how you decided to shoot the film, and then I'll explain how it felt to me.
Well, the film, we had to shoot it very fast. It's a low-budget film.
Extremely low-budget film. We had 21 days to shoot.
And the idea was, this is a movie about a guy named George who basically, we meet him on the day he loses the last place where he could stay. So he technically becomes homeless. He's trying different places. He doesn't have a supportive network. He doesn't have a family. We don't know much about him. And a lot of what the movie is the process of homelessness and going into the shelter system. And what we did is throw Richard into the real world. We hid the camera. A lot of exterior scenes were shot from inside stores, apartments, because this is a movie about a guy.
Roofs. Sometimes I didn't even know where the camera was. That's how kind of loose a lot of this was.
And the idea is that this is a movie about a guy we usually don't notice, all of us, many of us don't notice in the everyday, and the movie is calling attention to this guy. You almost have to find him sometimes in the frame, and slowly you realize that there's a story, there's a humanity, just like everybody else. Everyone has a story, everyone has a reason, and we're concentrating on him. So a lot of times we would be in situations where the live environment was real. We shot a scene in Astor Place. It was on our test day. We were trying to see if the concept worked.
Everything that was on the street was real.
Yeah.
We couldn't control the streets of New York, and we didn't have extras to. It was, and the way we decided to shoot too was it was digital, so we could have very, very long takes, Film, you can't really do that. And the first day was a test day. We called it a test day. And usually a test day is about, well, you're looking at costumes and hair, and maybe you're trying some other lenses or whatever. It's kind of a technical thing, but we knew that this was much more than that, because it was actually testing the whole concept that was underpinning how we were making the movie, which is with, you know, in some way of extreme documentary form. Could I, who's a known actor, be out in the streets of New York and get enough footage without people breaking the fourth wall and entering my world as Richard Gere as opposed to the character? So Oren set up the cameras in this Starbucks across the street from the Cube in Astor Place. Very famous place, and a lot of people walking through there, a real Greenwich Village known place. I would never stand on the street corner there as me. And
Let alone panhandling.
And so we set up the shot, and then I had an AD with kind of a Secret Service mic that he was talking to. He just looked like a normal street person. And I was, my trailer was a rented car, and I was in the back seat of a couple blocks away. So he came and said, okay, let's go. And so I walked into Astor Place, and I just stood there on a corner. And I was anxious for myself personally, because I wouldn't do that normally. I was extremely anxious as the producer of the movie, because if this didn't work, we didn't have a movie. There's no way we could shoot. We would have to stop immediately and just say, sorry. So I stood there, and I was in character. I looked like George in the movie. I was a homeless guy. Not an extreme case. For those of you who see the movie, or even seen the photograph that was on Facebook, it's not an extreme case, but it's not me. I stood there, and we became clear immediately that no one was making eye contact with me, and walking right by me. And as I relaxed a little bit and could feel the moment more, I was realizing that people were making a decision, consciously, unconsciously, from several blocks away, that there's a homeless guy on the corner, and I don't really want to engage him. And seeing the emotions that go through someone's mind of, he's homeless, he wants some money, I don't want to give him any money. Why should I don't have to give him any money. Why doesn't he get a job? What's, oh God, and I'm feeling guilty now that I don't give him any money. Why should he make me feel guilty? I'm really pissed off that he's making me feel guilty, that I'm not giving any money, blah, 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 blah. Without seeing me. A whole mental projection going on, which to me, they were totally naked. I was seeing this whole thing. And so a level of being invisible, I guess, would be the first level of my experience there. And then I started to feel a very long shot. We ended up shooting for over 40 minutes on this one shot, part of which is in the movie now.
And some we will release.
Yeah. I began to feel not invisibility, but a kind of an outside view, an outside-inside view of not being part of the structure anymore, of the best way to describe it is feeling like a black hole, that there was a black hole of despair, fear, that people were afraid to engage, that they would be sucked into. I think that's an honest representation of what I was feeling, is that people were actively not seeing me. It's not that I was invisible. They saw me, were actively not engaging, but because they did not see me. And from the profundity of this was, from my own point of view, obviously if I had a tuxedo and I'm on a red carpet, people would have been all over me. They were projecting that, movie star, sexy, has everything we want, and projecting that kind of craziness. In this situation, in many ways, the homeless guy was probably closer to who I really am than the guy in the tuxedo. But I was something that really needed to be avoided. And the truth of that, of feeling that in an extremely visceral way, was incredibly moving to me. Still is, when I go back and think about it. People walk around the city in their own shells. We all do. We walk around in our own shells. And we don't really engage the world. We engage our own minds. We engage the echo chamber of our own projections and fears and drives, our own false strategies to be happy. And that's all we know. And that's what has to be broken down. That's all those false projections.
Kelly Lincoln from Chicago
Hey, Kelly.
wants to know why isn't there more attention paid specifically to the plight of homeless women? I would add to that homeless families, which is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Children.
Well, in New York, it's 20% of, no, it's more than that, 30%. About 20,000 of the 60,000 people who are homeless are kids. Families are a high percentage of, yeah, you don't normally see that. You're much more aware of that guy sleeping on the park bench, or the guy on the corner, or the veteran. Our government agencies, we've been in Washington quite a few times, and it's clear from the work of Washington, Los Angeles, here in New York, that veterans, it's an easier route to get money and services for veterans, and for obvious reasons. You know, we respect them, what they've done, the commitment and sacrifices of a veteran.
It's also Republicans and Democrats can agree on veterans' contribution, whereas they cannot agree on many
And you
things.
can agree on kids, too. Kids is a little easier. Women also. Men, that's the difficult one. That's the difficult one. They're violent, they're crazy, why don't they get a job? That's a tough one. I would say in general, we don't really do much for the homeless. And we do the minimum. A shelter is a warehouse, you know, and they do the best they can to be benign, a benign warehouse, but that's all it is. It's a bed for the night. And it's not a particularly nice situation. And they don't want to make it particularly nice because they don't want you to come back. Warehousing will never work. It's complete recidivism, the warehousing approach. Real housing, long-term housing, long-term help from professionals who really know what they're doing, and being able to find the right people in social services that do have the patience and the skill to deal with a situation changes it. We'd be very successful with that. But I think we do think of the homeless as the others. It's very hard for us to see that that's actually my cousin, my brother, my sister, my kid, my father. But it's amazing to us, both of us, is how many people have stories. When we start talking about this in public around our film, it's very rare to find someone who doesn't have a story of someone who was close to them who was homeless, or still is. So I think it's within our experience. Again, it's breaking down this idea that, look, I'm in my world. It's not my problem. It is our problem, and it's the joy of transforming a problem too is also ours. We have to tell our elected officials to do something about this. You have to tell your mayor to do something about it. You have to tell the governor to do something about it, and all over the world. Same issue, not just, we're living in New York right now. If you pan the camera around, you see downtown New York right here. It's our will, it's the will of the individual for self-transformation, and then to bring it out into the world and have expectations of the world we want to live in. You don't want to be teaching your kid that it's okay to walk by a homeless person, and it's not your problem. It's bad education. We have to start from the beginning that, yeah, it's all of our problem, it's all of our responsibility, it's all of our joy also.
There's another layer that is not often talked about, and you can put the compassion aside for a second. We know it's going to take political will to make a difference. But homelessness is an expensive problem.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money. It's not just something you can avoid on the street or sort of deal with on an individual level. Dealing with incarceration, mental health,
emergency room
emergency
visits.
rooms.
I mean, it's on and on and on. It's in a way, it's like prisons. Our prison systems are warehousing also, and it costs us an enormous amount of money. And recidivism in prisons it's about 75%. Because we do it so badly. Even for nonviolent crimes, this is costing us over a lifetime millions and millions of dollars per person, because we have bad systems of dealing, bad philosophies of how to deal with this. It's warehousing, punishment, warehousing. Much less money to embrace it and go, okay, we can fix this. Let's just spend the money for the permanent housing services, and we have productive, happy, successful people. It's not like you're making millionaires, billionaires. You're making people who know how to function in the world and create happy and successful families. That's a good investment, and it's cheaper than doing it the other way. So in the short run and the long run.
There are many reasons for homelessness. One component, and this is the next question, is stigma around homelessness is mental health. How do we get to the root of that invisibility and avoidance?
Well, this started in the 80s, really. I forget what the Reagan years were when. When was he president?
In the 80s.
When did he start in the 80s? I think it was first. Was it
1980?
1980? Yeah. President Reagan defunded much of the mental health programs, and just didn't feel like it was our responsibility to do that anymore. And that started the detaching, I think, of our kind of societal responsibility to those of us who had mental issues that needed to be cared for. And there is a huge component on the streets of mentally ill people who shouldn't be treated as criminals, but as people who have serious health problems and need that kind of care and mentoring. Usually we think of homeless people as one size fits all. It's a homeless person. But there are many, many issues. Obviously, some are mental, some are psychological, guilt, depression, other issues that come in. Some clearly have huge problems, and they're special issues. There are people who've lost their job. There are people that now their paychecks just doesn't stretch far enough anymore. You lose your home. There's a huge menu of problems that lead to homelessness. So there's not one solution that fits all. Certainly the common denominator is housing first, housing first, housing first, housing first. And then you deal with the other issues through agency that can offer strategies and help in a wide range of possibilities.
I think also the issue of mental health is a bigger issue than just homelessness. And in this country, obviously, we're dealing with it in a lot of different ways. There is a movement growing, something called the Campaign to Change Direction, which is highlighting mental health issues. And I urge you to check them out, because they, along with Michelle Obama and people who are dedicated to destigmatizing mental illness and getting a conversation going, have created a system called the 5 Signs that is really a great starting point to have this conversation these days, dealing with mental health issues in homelessness, but many other arenas as well. We're sort of winding down the questions for this round 1, and many of them are a little repetitive.
They all want stories. I can see in here. There
Well,
was
yeah, a story about the experience of
You
making
know,
a movie?
there was actually the guy. I have two stories that relate to movies. When Oren and I started working on this, and I wanted him to go into the shelters, the gentleman from the Coalition for the Homeless, who was taking us around, we actually met the first time we met. Remember, it was late at night in a parking garage
Yeah,
in
it was-
Queens or somewhere. I
It was
forget.
very B movie.
It
Yeah.
really was B-movie. So we all kind of met there with our different vehicles. It was like a drug deal going down. It was like, okay, we meet in the dark in a parking garage, and we got into a van together, and David from the Coalition started talking to me, and he said, "You know, we worked together." And I'm thinking, what? He said, "Yeah, I was in the costume department and on film of yours, Mr. Jones, in shooting in San Diego." And I went, "Wow, my God, what happened?" And I said, 9/11 happened, I had some other issues, and I ended up on the streets myself," he said. And many years of just losing it. Had been extremely productive, and then he wasn't anymore. And once you go down that rabbit hole, it's very hard to get out of it. He found the internal resources to pull himself out of it, and started working with the Coalition for the Homeless. So his experience now is being fed back into a system in a positive way, helping other people. I had another similar one in Bellevue when I was doing my research work there, and I was just hanging out. People were coming in about 7 o'clock at night. You have to be in by a certain time or you don't get a bed. You're not allowed in. So people start to congregate. It was around 7 o'clock. And I heard a voice, "Hey, Richard." And I turned around and I thought, oh man, I'm getting busted here. And a young man came up to me and said, you remember me? And I said, "I'm sorry." I said, gave me his name. And I said, "We worked on a film a few years ago. I was an actor. I am an actor." And I of course, I recalled him, and I remember the scene that we had done together. And I said, "What happened?" He said, "No, I just wasn't making any money. I lost my apartment. I'm kind of embarrassed, but here I am." And we hugged, and I wished him well, and he processed himself and went into his room. I don't think any of us is ultimately that far away from losing it. And especially in the world we're in today, where money doesn't go as far as it did. This income inequality is something very, very real. None of us are that far away from falling off the cliff. And I think we have to keep our hearts warm to that and see our brothers and sisters who have fallen off the cliff in a different way, that it's us tomorrow, maybe.
And that is the last question for now. Until
Yeah,
next time.
Look, this, again, I'm so happy that we could spend some time together, but the next time if you want to do this again, let me restate. The reason I wanted to do this was to have some kind of a dialogue. And the technology for that, we're going to try to work it out, figure a way to do that. I don't want to give speeches. It's the most boring thing in the world for me. I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me what you're feeling. Include me in that communication. I want to listen. I want to feel where you're coming from. And maybe together we can figure out a way to create a situation that we can do something that is good, that we can be good, that we can be good and really have a positive impact that we could be proud of. And our parents would be proud of us, and our kids would be proud of us. And ultimately, on our deathbed, believe me, I'm not going to be thinking about movies. I'll be thinking about, was I good? Was I good? Did I do a few good things? That's about it. So anyhow, let's figure a way to, if you want to continue this and take it to another level. All right? Thanks a lot. And I hope we didn't bore you too much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.